Tourists unaware they're watching one of the deadliest tsunamis in recent history approaching, a passenger calmly filming his flight as it suddenly dives toward the ground, fireballs streaking across the sky, a plane exploding on takeoff, and meteors hitting cities. These are disturbing moments filmed seconds before disasters. Hearing someone ask, "What is that?" while watching one of the deadliest tsunamis in recent memory slowly approaching, that is pretty damn chilling. It started with a 9.1 to 9.3 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Sumatra on the morning of December 26, 2004. It was one of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded, and it happened along a fault line that runs under the Indian Ocean. The seafloor shifted by several meters in just a few seconds, which pushed up a huge amount of water. That's all a tsunami really is, the ocean getting shoved upwards so fast the energy has nowhere to go but outward. The worst part is that there was no tsunami warning system in the Indian Ocean at the time. Countries around the Pacific had systems, but the Indian Ocean didn't, so nobody had any advance notice. In Thailand, people first noticed the water pulling away from the beach. Boats were sitting on dry sand, and reefs that were usually underwater were suddenly visible. Locals knew that this was a bad sign, but tourists just assumed it was some weird low tide. Well, minutes later, the first wave hit. It was unbelievably strong. It ripped through hotels, shops, houses, and entire streets. In many places, the second wave was even bigger. The destruction stretched across Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and the Maldives. Around 230,000 people died, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history. This passenger filmed the moments just before and after his flight crashed. The plane was flying from Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, to Grozny in southern Russia on December 25, 2024. The passenger continuously whispers Allahu Akbar as the plane suddenly goes into a steep dive. Other than that though, the man is holding it together. He's pretty calm. If it weren't for the oxygen masks hanging over the seats and the faint cries from other passengers around him, you'd think he was just filming a normal video. But he probably thought these were going to be his last words. The plane hit the ground 3 kilometers from the city. 38 people died, 32 survived. Kazakh emergency crews put out a fire that broke out after the crash, and a special flight brought in doctors to treat the injured. Sanu Jaswal was on a Yeti Airlines flight from Kathmandu to Pokhara, a city in the foothills of the Himalayas. He started a Facebook live stream on his phone, casually showing the view out the window with green fields, buildings, the mountains in the distance. His friends were laughing behind him. At one point, he turned the camera on himself and smiled. This would be the last time anyone saw him alive, because just moments later, the plane suddenly veered to the left. You hear passengers screaming for a few seconds as the phone shakes and the screeching sound of an engine comes through. Then the frame fills with flames and smoke. The crash killed 72 people on board. The co-pilot, Anju Katwada, had trained in the United States after her husband died in a 2006 plane crash for the same airline. This truck driver was just sitting around minding his own business when he watched a horrific plane crash right in front of him. On a Tuesday afternoon at Louisville's Muhammad Ali International Airport, a UPS cargo plane attempted takeoff and never made it. A truck driver parked nearby watched as the plane flew past, flames already trailing behind as it sped down the runway. Within seconds, it rolled over and slammed into a lot filled with cargo trucks. The jet, carrying about 50,000 gallons of fuel, crashed into a petroleum recycling plant just south of the runway, setting off a blaze that took over 100 firefighters to bring under control. At least 12 people were killed, including the 3 crew members on board, and 11 others were injured. The plane had recently been grounded for over a month for fuel tank repairs. This fireball you're watching streak across the sky was captured just minutes before total chaos broke out. The Chelyabinsk meteor came out of nowhere on February 15, 2013. It was right in the middle of the morning rush. People were driving to work, kids were heading to school, and then suddenly the sky lit up with this blinding white flash. It was bright enough that dash cams auto-adjusted as if they were staring into the sun. A lot of people thought something had exploded on the ground, because that's kind of what it looked like. A massive flash, followed by a few seconds of silence. Then the shockwave hit. Windows blew out across the city, car alarms went off, and entire buildings shook hard enough to set off fire systems. More than 1,500 people ended up injured, and the majority of those injuries came from shattered glass hitting people who ran to their windows to see what was going on. The explosion happened about 30 kilometers above the ground, but it still released energy equal to several hundred kilotons of TNT, way more than the Hiroshima bomb. Why to take everyone off guard though? Well, what threw scientists off is that the meteor flew in from the direction of the sun, which meant it was basically invisible until it entered the atmosphere. This was the last photo ever taken of a man named Saman Kunan, a former Navy diver on a rescue mission. Saman Kunan was a Thai Navy SEAL who later worked as a security guard at an airport in Bangkok. Saman was a triathlete, kayaker, hiker, and a member of a well-known Thai cycling team. In June and July of 2018, he volunteered as a diver in the massive cave rescue in northern Thailand, helping save 12 boys and their football coach trapped in a flooded cave system. On the evening of July 5th, he and a diving partner were placing air tanks along a planned exit route when Saman ran out of air on his way back. His partner pulled him from the water and performed CPR, but he never regained consciousness. He was posthumously promoted from petty officer first class to lieutenant commander, an unprecedented jump of 7 ranks. Yachts, statues, and murals now honor him, including a bronze statue outside the cave. What you're looking at here are spectators from the ground watching the Space Shuttle Challenger take off. The morning of January 28, 1986 started like any other launch day at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The Space Shuttle Challenger was ready to go with 7 crew members on board, including teacher Krista McCollum, who was set to be the first civilian in space. Families and spectators, including some of Krista's students, were out at the launch site, and millions more were watching on TV. But just 73 seconds after liftoff, an O-ring in one of the rocket boosters failed. Hot gases escaped and hit the external fuel tank, and the shuttle broke apart midair. Everyone on board died instantly, and all anyone could do was watch helplessly from the ground. It was especially sad given that McAuliffe was on board. She was not just an astronaut, she was a teacher, a symbol of hope and inspiration. It was devastating. I can't imagine being one of her students watching this happen in real time. Pictured here is Gary Slock and his mother Petra. Sadly, they and the 296 other people on the flight never made it to their destination. On July 17, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was struck over eastern Ukraine. The plane was a Boeing 777 carrying passengers from the Netherlands, Malaysia, Australia, and several other countries. Investigators later learned that the plane had been hit by a missile fired from territory controlled by pro-Russian separatists. All 298 people on board were killed instantly. This is the last photo ever taken of William D. Becker, the former mayor of St. Louis, along with 9 other dignitaries as they climbed aboard a brand new Waco CG-4 glider at Lambert St. Louis Airport in 1943. This was to be the first public demonstration of the aircraft, showing off how it could glide after being towed into the air. Spectators lined the runway, excited to watch the glider lift off. The glider was towed into the air by a plane, gaining altitude until it was ready to glide on its own. Then the towing cable was released, and almost immediately, the glider's right wing snapped right off. Without that wing, there was no way to control it. These were engineless gliders. They were built for war to quietly glide into enemy territory, not survive a catastrophic failure like this. Suddenly, 10 men were trapped inside, unable to do anything as the craft plummeted toward the ground. All 10 aboard died instantly. This last video comes from a guy who intentionally put himself in harm's way for clout. And given everything else we've seen on this list, well, it just makes this even more aggravating. During Hurricane Milton, a kick streamer named Mike Smalls Jr. decided to participate in what people were calling a hurricane challenge. Basically a dare where another streamer promised $70,000 to anyone who could survive streaming through the storm. Smalls went live in Tampa with pretty much zero protection, just an umbrella and an air mattress. And then he told them that if he hit 100,000 viewers, he'd actually jump into a flooding river. Well, of course, he hit that number, so he jumped. Mind you, he didn't know how to swim. Not great for a guy on a river in a raging storm with nothing but an inflatable mattress. The wind picked up, the current pushed him away, and he had to literally cling to a tree to keep from being carried off. Luckily, he survived. Narrowly. The Tampa police put out a statement saying that intentionally putting yourself in danger during a hurricane can pull rescue teams away from people who actually need help. Crazy, that's something that actually needs to be specified nowadays. Well, that's been the video for today. I will catch you, yes you specifically, in the next one.